Everybody, at the start of the meeting, we do have a quorum because we have two members that are online and we have two members that are here in person. So we're going to start with introductions. We'll start with Mr. Rossi. Yes, just your name, yep.
Ryan Rossi.
Yeah.
Faith Schulstrom.
Heather Frederick, Chief Financial Officer.
Leanne Evans, I'm the treasurer for the school district.
Patricia Morales, and I'm the district's deputy general counsel. Thank you.
Okay, and then our online members, we have Miss Lori Benino is online, and we have Mr. Parks is online, and then we have district staff as well. So we have the principals, Mr. Brian McClellan. Let me see.
Yes, hi, Brian McClellan.
Yep, I was just pulling up the list. Miss Laura Paulo, she's my assistant, and she'll be taking notes. Mr. Sanchez. And then we have.
Yeah, I'm here. This is Joe Sanchez. I wanted to call at the same time, but yeah, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. And then we have some district support staff from IT as well as communications to help with the meeting. And so, Ms. Benino, since you're virtual, the chair was unable to attend, and you are the vice chair. Would you like me to run the meeting, or how would you like to proceed?
I'm sorry, you broke up. Would I like you to do what?
Would you like me to run the meeting since you're virtual today?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so we started with introductions. Next, see whether there's any public comment, and there is no public that we have today, so no public comment. We'll start with the first action item, approving the minutes from February 29th. Okay, and so
Make a motion.
take a motion. All right, approved unanimously. The next item is a discussion of the FY22 budget development update. And I wanted to, I will be doing a board workshop presentation tomorrow. So this presentation is really the same presentation that will be presented to the board tomorrow at the board workshop, but wanted to give the committee an update from the close of the legislative session because we had some legislative items that could potentially have a significant impact on the budget. The first one being FRS. There was a big difference between what the House was proposing and the Senate was proposing, from no rate increase at all to a potential rate increase that would result in an increased impact to our district budget of $40 to $50 million. And so I wanted to be able to give the committee an update as to where we're at. So starting with the Florida retirement benefits, we ended with the Senate proposal with some slight changes. So a very minimal increase of 0.5%, which for our district budget represents only $500,000. So very minimal impact related to FRS. I do anticipate, because the last 2 years, the cost of living increases has been a topic at the legislature, so I assume it is going to be brought back in future years as well. But for this year, we're looking at only a $500,000 increase in our FRS rates. For deregulation, just focusing on the deregulation that have a financial impact, school districts are allowed to post our public notices on an official website, which we will be doing through the county. And we can do it on our official website, in addition to what was passed last year was that it could be put on a county website. Right now, we are working with the county to participate in the platform the county is developing. It's a cost to our district of about $5,000 to participate with the county, but the amount that we spend on advertisements is close to $100,000 a year. So this will have a savings to our district budget. Even just the budget for the posting of the tentative budget, we spend $3,000 to $4,000 a year on those advertisements that we will no longer have to do. So that's a That's a definite benefit, and it's very restrictive as to where it has to be placed in the newspaper, the size of the font. So those are things that we won't have to worry about going forward. They also, as part of deregulation, reduce some of the financial reporting requirements. So we can, much of what we're required to do is to report monthly. We are now with some instances, are going to be allowed to do some quarterly reporting. We don't have plans at this point to change any of our reporting. We're going to continue as is, but we'll wait to see if FDOE provides any additional guidance. One of the proposals that Ms. Evans presented was one that was approved by the legislature, was allowing the use of the COPS financing to be used for non-school facilities, because it was just for school buildings, but now we can use it for ancillary facilities as well. And then the cost per student station has been suspended to 2028, so another 2 years from where it is right now in 2026. House Bill 1285, the education bill, has a lot of information in it, but one that has a financial impact is giving a $50 performance-based bonus for IB teachers that are currently excluded. And the one program for the IB program that's currently excluded is Theory of Knowledge. And so that's would have an impact in our district of about $20,000. We don't know if the actual calculation and the amount of funding we're going to receive from the state is going to be changed in any way, but calculating on the teachers that would have been eligible this year, it would be about $20,000. And this is a class that all IB students are required to take. They were just never as part of the IB program, but these teachers were just excluded from the funding formula, from receiving a bonus. So that was just a correction of that. It's a baseline course that all students in the IB program are required to take. It's just that for some reason, these teachers never received the bonus, and so now they're included in receiving the bonus. The safety bill provides, there's a lot of information in the safety bill, but one of the items that has a financial impact is there's a $1,000 bonus to each school principal and charter school administrator for those who comply with the school safety requirements. And there was additional funding that has been added in order to pay for this bonus. We have House Bill 1403, the school education choice a bill, and this was, similar to the one that expanded the use of vouchers, where it eliminated all the eligibility requirements. So now it's not significant changes, but making sure to clarify that active military families, they don't have to be on waiting lists, eliminating the waiting list for the special needs students. Also added some guidelines to the scholarships and how the funding for the scholarships can be used. So that is going to be required to come out from the scholarship funding organizations, are required to provide some additional guidance on restrictions for the use of those funds. So House Bill 5001 and House Bill 5003, that's the General Appropriations Act, as well as the implementing bill. Those really tie to the FEFP. But as part of the General Appropriations Act, there's $200 million that was set aside outside of the FEFP for school recognition. It used to be embedded within FEFP, and now it's more treated like a separate appropriation outside of the FEFP program. Workforce funding, that was funded at $19 million. There's a school choice transportation stipend. And the legislature set aside $14 million, so it's first come, first serve based on that transportation stipend. What I just talked about with the principal safety $1,000 bonus, the legislature set aside $3.8 million in order to fund that bonus. And teacher classroom supply, that's a minimum of $300. We're required to provide a minimum of $300, and that comes out of our base student funding. So that's not an additional allocation within the General Appropriation Act. Just each year, they have to tell us how much we need to set aside. And so it's $300 per teacher. Under House Bill 5101, it's providing for, and there's a lot of information in that education bill as well, but those that have a financial impact, the legislature, instead of each year waiting to see whether they're going to set aside a stabilization reserve, they actually put in that they're going to have a minimum of $250 million for enrollment stabilization each year. So they could do more, but at least at a minimum, they're going to have $250 million. And so that will minimize any impact if the state does not appropriately project what the statewide enrollment is going to be. There is something new added, which doesn't have an impact to us right now, but the Florida Department of Education is going to be required to track all school board referendum and the debt tied to that referendum for capital outlay or operational purposes. And so that's, right, like what I said, doesn't have an impact on us now, but that could be something that could potentially have an impact going forward. And then this bill also, this is where the stipend for the school choice transportation is established, but then it's funded from the General Appropriations Act above. Ms. Schulstrom, did you have a question? Yeah. So that's how they kind of all work, together, like the GAA and the implementing bills tied to all the other educational bills that were passed. The two that did not pass, that ended up failing, was the conversion charter schools. That was the one where there was the potential amendment to force districts, if we had 2 years of declining enrollment, to provide our vacant land to charter schools for them to be able to build. And then sovereign immunity at the last minute ended up failing. It was resurrected, and then it ended up dying at the last minute. Sovereign immunity is another one that has been brought forward the past several years, and so I do anticipate it will be brought forward again next year, and we will have an increase. It's just, which year is it going to be which year is it going to pass? And we really thought it was potentially going to be this year, but it looks like we were able to kick the can down the road one more year. All right, so now getting into FEFP and the funding that was actually passed. So this is similar format that you've seen from year to year, but if you start with row 1, you can see enrollment for Palm Beach County is projected to increase 8,400 students. That increase in students includes district-operated charter schools as well as vouchers. And so on the next slide, you'll be able to see the breakout between those 3 categories. If you look at our base student funding, we had an increase in our base student funding of $191 per student. And when you apply our comparable wage factor, which went down slightly, our increase in our base student funding was 3.8%, or $181 per student. The comparable wage factor used to be called the district cost differential, and that's based on the Florida price level index. It's an average of the past 3 years of what our Florida price level index is for Palm Beach County. And that decrease in the comparable wage factor, that impact is about a $3 million reduction in our revenue. So going down from the 4.42% to the 4.08%, that resulted in about a $3 million reduction in our funding. And the other item I didn't mention is there's a difference between our unweighted FTE and our weighted, or which is what is our funded FTE. And the way that that's calculated is based on cost factors. We have a cost factor that's allocated based on each program the student is in. So whether they're a K through 3 student versus a 4 through 8 student versus a 9 through 12 student, whether they're an ESE student, or whether they're an English language learner student, we get a certain weight for each of those students. And I mentioned that when I talked about the FEFP funding formula and how that all works. And the Florida Department of Education adjusts those cost factors each year. That is also based on a 3-year average. And some of the cost factors this year were reduced, and the impact of the reduction of those cost factors results in a loss of $5 million in our revenue. So just wanted to mention that. So between the changes within the cost factors and the changes within our comparable wage factor, we have almost $10 million less in revenue than if those would have just stayed the same value. In looking at the increase in the other categoricals, we had an increase in the ESC guarantee. So that's funding that has to be specifically used for our special needs students. Our district spends well above what we receive. So we have an increase of $6.9 million, but that includes the allocation to charter schools. We have an increase in the educational enrichment funds of $1.8 million, safe schools of $2.8 million, transportation of about $1 million, and the mental health assistance of $1.3 million. We used to have more categoricals, like instructional materials, as well as the reading allocation, which you can see is 0. All of those have been rolled up within the base student allocation. So we still need to track them, although they're not separated out as a separate categorical any longer. And looking at the next slide, we had an increase in our state-funded discretionary supplement. That helps to offset the amount of local revenue that the vouchers students are receiving. Our required local effort is going up slightly. And if you move down to the enrollment breakdown, you can see of that increase of 8,400 students, district-operated schools are projected to increase by 800 students, charter schools by 400, and the voucher students by 7,200 students. So looking at the increase of 8,400, the majority of it is going to be an increase within our voucher students. Initially, the Florida Department of Ed was projecting we would have a decrease in our district-operated schools of 400, but we were able to demonstrate that over the past several years, our trend has been a modest increase each year in enrollment. So they went back and revised, and they did increase the district projected enrollment by 800 and slightly offset that against, they slightly reduced the increase of the voucher students to help offset that.
Compared to last year, the voucher increase, are there additional 7,000 students?
It will be an additional 7,000 is what's projected. That will be,
Or is that because they've increased the amount in the voucher? Is that because they've increased the amount in vouchers, or just more kids will be taking advantage of the same amount?
it's probably going to be a combination of both. You know, more parents taking advantage of the voucher program, as well as new schools signing on to be eligible to participate in the voucher program.
And the state provided more money for vouchers or not?
Well, they provided, and they have an increase in the projected enrollment, which is supposed to include the increase of voucher students. So in Palm Beach County, the FEFP includes an increase of 7,200 students for vouchers. And then they also set aside $250 million in that education stabilization reserve. So if the state under-projected the voucher enrollment, they have $250 million set aside to cover that shortfall.
And can public school districts ask for that also if they
Yes.
get it higher?
Yes, it is, it's to provide, it's to provide a minimum amount so that if enrollment fluctuates significantly, they'll be able to hold harmless.
Thank you.
So the overall increase in funding is $210 per student, or 2.27%. The base student allocation also includes an increase in the Florida Classroom Teacher Compensation Program, which is an increase of $13.9 million. That used to be broken out as a separate categorical, and that's just embedded now within the base student allocation. So we're looking at an increase of $56,500,000. And so how does that break down? So if we start with 56,500,000, we have a minimal increase in FRS of only $500,000. We have the increase in the mental health that we have to use for specifically mental health initiatives as outlined in state statute. So we have to back that out. We have to back out the increase in the teacher compensation, which is net of the charter schools. So for Palm Beach County, it would be district-operated schools is $12.5 million. For health premiums, I'm going to add that below because health premiums really are a challenge. Our fund, we are seeing an increase in our health claims that aligns with the national trend, and so we are going to have another increase within our health premiums. We have already talked about the impact of ESSER, and ESSER will be sunsetting at the end of this year, and the amount to sustain our ESSER initiatives is $7.8 million. We have to set aside 3% of our total revenue to comply with our board contingency reserve. We usually set that aside from the funding we receive from the state, but what I'm proposing to do is to use one-time funds this year to cover that increase in the contingency. So it would be $5 million of one-time funds to cover the contingency, so that would leave some more money available for salary and benefit reserve. We have that increase of approximately 800 students within district-operated schools, and with an increase in students, we also have to increase staffing, so that cost is about $3.3 million. We have some changes now that we've gone through all the department reviews. We have an increase in department budgets of $1.5 million. And then we had a salary settlement agreement this year, and some of our unions are on a calendar year basis. And so that $4.2 million is to represent the settlement that we made this year in FY14, the full impact of that in next fiscal year. So that's an additional 4.2. So the total that we already have, set aside is $30.9 million. So that leaves a surplus of $25.5 million. So if we look at the amount we have set aside for the teacher compensation, that's in the base student allocation, that's $12.5 million, plus the surplus of the $25.5 million, that leaves $38 million for salary and benefits reserve to help cover a raise as well as, to help offset increases in health premiums. In looking at, just to briefly go over the general fund impacts to sustain those ESSER initiatives of the $7.8 million, there are 7 positions totaling $500,000 because the departments were able to offset by either eliminating positions or non-salary in order to reduce that dollar impact. We have instructional software that we're going to have to reabsorb back into the budget. That's about $2 million. And then we had other ESSER initiatives, the EPI teachers, those are international teachers that we're helping to use to reduce our vacancy rate, as well as expanding the use of ACT and College Board. That's an initiative that we used within ESSER. So total ESSER initiatives are $5.3 million. Changes in departments. So after going through a detailed review of departments, we're looking at a total impact of $1.5 million in changes. The majority of it is in software. So we have some additional software that we need in order to help comply with state statute, one being a library media program. We also wanted to institute a social media monitoring program as well. We have what we call Saturday extra duty days. Those extra duty days are to help keep us on track with our ESE testing. So that's something we want to make sure to continue. We want to pressure wash some schools. We've been painting all of our schools, so we need to make sure to keep them in order to make that painting last longer, make sure that we pressure wash and keep the schools clean. That is not something that would fall under capital, so it's something that it's more like a custodial cost, and so that's why it's something that has to be included in the general fund versus capital.
I wondered how that fell under software.
Oh, it doesn't fall under this is everything within, that's more like
Got it.
non-salary. So I grouped them all together. So all of these add up to 1.1 million, but I categorize them by dollar impact. So the software initiatives have the most significant impact, and then from there, it goes down. So I didn't want to put the exact dollar amount for the different platforms, because I don't want the vendors to know how much money we have set aside in order to cover the costs of them. But the Saturday extra duty days, for example, is $250,000 for those extra duty days. You know, the pressure washing is approximately $400,000 in costs for pressure washing. Increase in graduation, those costs are about $60,000. We use the Florida Fairgrounds, and they increased. We had some increases in the contract with the fairgrounds, as well as needing some additional audio-visual. We have position changes in the departments, so not adding any positions, but making some organizational changes within the departments. The IT department wanted to expand the internships that they have. They use a lot of our students, our district students, for those internship programs, and it has been very successful. So they wanted to expand that. We have every year increases in just our our regular software, contracted software that we have. We always have just contractual increases within those contracts, and then some small increases in travel and supplies in the department. So all of that different stuff adds up to 1.1 million. The next bullet for professional development for project-based learning and the implementation of the Destiny Library Manager system, which is the library media program above, of $258,000 is a one-time cost. So that's one time, and why I have it separated out in a separate bullet. And then within the general counsel's department, they're looking to add one legal position, and then they've also had an increase in court reporting costs and consultant costs, and all of those total $150,000. So all of that totals a total of 1.5 million within the departments.
Can you tell us something about the Destiny Library system?
The reason for the Destiny Library is our district was using, as part of state statute, we're required to post all of our school libraries online. So all of the books that are being used by each of the teachers, we have to post them online. We were using Google Books, which was a free software since we utilize Google as a district. Google shut off the access for Google Books, so we're no longer allowed to have it available to the public. So right now we have a workaround where staff is manually downloading the information and manually uploading it to our website so that it can be publicly available. The use of Destiny Library Manager now has a module within it, which we already use for just our regular textbook inventory system, that we can use for that same purpose. And we can go back and have it posted automatically on the website, and instead of having to have that manual intervention each day where we have to download it and re-upload it.
Thank you.
Okay. And this is just an update of our historical enrollment based on the actual projected enrollment that DOE approved for our district. So the blue bar is for district-operated schools. So we're at 165,203, so that increase of about 800 students. Orange is charter. Charter had a decrease of 400 students this year. They're projected to have an increase of 400 students next year, so they would be at 22,463. And then the gray bar are the voucher students, and you can see that vouchers are now expected to have higher enrollment than charter schools at 22,564. And then within our capital project fund, Ms. Evans will give a brief overview.
And give Ms. Frederick a break for a second. So the capital budget, we're still working on the capital plan. We're expanding it. We're required to do a 5-year plan. We've done 10 years for the last 10 years or so since we did the sales tax referendum. And now that we're looking at the next referendum, we're expanding that even further to 12 years. So we're still working on the plan right now, and still working on balancing FY '25. So not as far along as the general fund, but we hope to have that ready for you at your next meeting. The significant changes we have so far is the addition of the Riviera Beach High School, which will be on the current Inlet Grove site. That was discussed at a budget workshop with the board, capital budget workshop with the board recently. The Inlet Grove will be moving from the site where Riviera Beach High School will be to where Lincoln Elementary School is now. And the students from Lincoln, students and staff from Lincoln will be moving to nearby schools. There are 3 other elementary schools that are within walking distance. So they're working on a plan for which students would go where, which staff would go where. Still really in the development for that. And it's a couple of years away because we have, Lincoln is being used as a holding school for a school that's under construction and another one that's about to be. So it's a couple of years before this all happens, but it requires a lot of planning and we need to include it in the capital plan. We're also adding the elementary school in the area of Westlake, and I mistakenly said Westlake Elementary School. It's actually named Southwest Area Elementary. It's in the development where Westlake is at, so my apologies for using the wrong name there. But it's in the Westlake development. So that's the big construction projects that will be added. We are adding some positions in capital. There are 5 more positions needed to help make sure we finish all the projects in the referendum as well as all the other work that's coming. I personally think we were a little low on staffing there, and they've really been struggling, so adding these positions in will make sure they can get the work done as timely as possible. And we're also adding some positions into the capital maintenance transfer. So we're transferring money from the capital budget into general fund to maintain the buildings. So that's 5 positions to deal with the growth in South County. We've added 3 new schools, and we've increased the size of 3 other schools, adding grades 6 to 8. So they just have a lot of square footage down there, so 5 more positions there. 3 positions to deal with ongoing security issues. We now have a 24-hour required turnaround if there's problems with locks or windows or doors. We just don't have enough staff to do it right now. So we want to make sure we can keep those schools safe and secure. And 3 more positions to deal with just the increase in the small projects throughout the district. There's a ton of them. I mean, it's up to hundreds of projects per person right now. So it's just not feasible to continue to manage that. So we've added a few positions in capital. And that's what I know right now, but we'll be bringing some more information back to you at the next meeting, hopefully with a fully balanced 12-year capital plan.
All right, so that's where we're at right now. So the general fund is balanced with a $38 million set aside for salary and benefits reserved. But when we look forward, I mean, we do have some uncertainty of what is enrollment going to look like come out count day. So we do an 11-day adjustment based on actual enrollment. What is the impact of the vouchers going to be? We are fortunate this year that the state legislature did add in that reserve of the $250 million, not only for this year, but they added in language that it's going to be in there for every year, at least a minimum of $250 million. So that is it. That at least helps to ensure that we won't have any large prorated holdback if enrollment comes in higher than what was projected at the state level. We do know that there's going to be an increase in health premiums this year, so working through that, and what is the difference going to be between a raise? There is one pot of money, so whatever a portion is set aside for health premiums, that would then reduce the amount that's available to give a raise for employees. It's always better to give a raise because at least that goes into your FRS and your pension benefits. But we are working through that with the unions right now. And then future legislative increases in FRS. I do anticipate, since the last 2 years, cost of living has been brought up, and that's going to continue to be brought up in the upcoming years. So what's going to happen? When are we going to have to start funding those potential cost of living increases? Within the Capital Projects Fund, we do have board approval of going to the voters for continuing our current sales tax. and due to escalating costs. And so that would go to the voters in November. So that is a future consideration as well. You know, that is needed for us to continue to just maintain our current facilities. And then what other potential legislative changes are out there? After the expansion of vouchers, it doesn't seem like there could be much more that could be done to charter schools, but you don't ever want to say that it couldn't be worse. So what else could happen in the future? So we do have a budget workshop tomorrow, and it's going to be the same presentation as today. Our next Budget Advisory Committee is scheduled for April 23rd. The reason for that is we have another board workshop scheduled on the 1st. I'm not sure how much new material we'll have for a workshop on the 23rd. It depends on how much we have ready on the capital side. So if we don't have enough information, I will end up canceling it, and then I would put in, we might then wait and then just do the Budget Advisory Committee on May 30th, because that would be able to provide us some more time to provide some information on the capital budget. Or I'll, add another meeting in once we have more information.
I have a question on the capital budget, those positions that are being added. It seems like the compensation level is different for the two, for the positions in capital and the positions in CMT.
Yeah, there's positions that are being split funded between the capital maintenance transfer, and so it's not just 5 positions. There's actually positions that are currently in the maintenance transfer that are moving into capital, and they're being split funded, and that helps offset some of the increases down below.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Should have mentioned that when I went through it. Thank you for bringing it up.
And our next, our next Budget Advisory Committee is the 23rd, but like I said, I will keep the committee posted as to the amount of material we have available related to capital. And then, right after that, it will just be the committee working on the report to the board. And then we'll plan on when that presentation to the board will be. But the next tentative budget adoption is on July 31st, and final budget adoption is on September 4th. So are there any other questions?
That was a pace.
Yes, so we did. This one was much shorter than last time, because I know last time was a rough one to get through. But wanted to make sure, like I said, to give the committee an update of where we are before the presentation to the board tomorrow. All right.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all. And then
You
the
need a
meeting.
motion?
Yeah, we need a motion to adjourn
I
the
move we
meeting.
adjourn
Second. All
at
right.
2:10.
All right, thank you. All righty.